So weird.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Real Rich Advice. Today we're going to be talking about home inspections. So home inspections are really a critical part of the home buying process, and it's something that we recommend to all of our clients. There are various ways you can go about doing a home inspection. The two primary ways that people do them is they either do a pre-inspection, what we sometimes call a walk and talk, or we do a home inspection while the property is under contract during the initial 3 to 7 days right after the house has been ratified. So with that, we really believe that home inspections on almost all cases are something that a buyer should certainly do, again, either before putting in an offer or after. But regardless, with home inspections, there's a real big gamut of home inspectors and the different approaches. So today we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the different approaches to home inspection, because ultimately the home inspection is the best opportunity to learn about the home that you're about to purchase, as well as to find out if there are any unforeseen things with the home that could negatively affect its value, and sort of helps you know what you're buying and the condition that it's in. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the sort of spectrum that home inspectors operate on and the different approaches.
Yeah, so there are several different approaches. There's the one approach where the home inspector makes you feel like you're buying the best house in the world and that everything is perfect. And the problem with some of these home inspectors, when they do that, is they miss certain items because they're so focused on making you feel good that you don't often know about unforeseen expenses down the road once you buy the house. The other end of the spectrum is the home inspector that feels it's their right to help you renegotiate the contract. Oftentimes, they don't even know what the contract says. So some of those inspectors scare people big time, and the transactions often go sideways because the buyer doesn't feel good about the process, and the home inspector has sometimes really terrified them about buying this home. The home inspectors that we generally like the best are the ones that are very pragmatic, and they at the same time make you feel good about the house you're buying, but they also are very thorough and they investigate everything, the systems of the house, and they are thorough and they find stuff and they make you feel good about the process. So those are the ones we generally like to use and we prefer in our transactions. Jordan.
And so with home inspections, mainly when we find things, there are three sort of scenarios we have. One is that a purchaser's buying a property with no ability to negotiate, meaning they're going into the property as is, and they're conducting that home inspection for what we used to call informational purposes only, just to make sure that what you thought you were buying is still what you're buying. So that typically means that all the little things, outlets that might not work, and those sort of things are not really concerns of the purchaser. This is oftentimes when we're either in multiple offer situations or in a situation where you're trying to maybe lower your offer price and try to entice a seller to take your offer by saying, you know what, I'm not going to get into the little things on the home inspection. And only if there's, say, a major problem like the foundation or something, is that ever a topic that we would discuss. The second thing is where we do have the ability to negotiate, and it is definitely a negotiation. And so that's where, when we're conducting that home inspection, we're going to be looking for items. I primarily encourage buyers to look at items that are safety items. And with those items, anything that we negotiate with the seller, again, that negotiation, we're looking to do one of two things. We're either going to look for the seller to make the repair to cure the item. For example, an outlet that's not working, they might then be asked to repair or replace the outlet. And the second item is to ask for a dollar credit to remedy that item. And that typically is in the form of a list of several items that are needing to be fixed with the property, and then having the seller and the buyer negotiate over a dollar amount. You know, could be $500, it could be $3,000. You never know, depending on the breadth and severity of that list. There are pros and cons to each of those strategies. So sometimes sellers want to just offer a credit because they're in the midst of moving. They might have already bought a house. They might be moving out of their house, and adding one more thing to their plate, for example, making a bunch of fixes, is not really something they're interested in. On the flip side, the advantage to the purchaser is that sometimes it allows the purchaser to either fix those items in a timeline that they want to fix. For example, some of these items might not be immediately pressing, an air conditioner that's very old but still works, something like that. And furthermore, it also allows the purchaser to repair that item with a particular person that they trust. So when the seller fixes the item, obviously the seller is going to hire their own contractor, and depending on what's being fixed, it'll determine whether that person's licensed or not. And then it's up to them to fix it. And normally it's to the buyer's satisfaction, but the buyer doesn't have a lot of say on how it is done. So that's where sometimes getting a credit can be advantageous, because then the purchaser, who's ultimately going to be the one living with the fix over time, gets the ability to decide how that repair is done. Now, on the flip side, the pros to having the seller fix the items as opposed to credit is sometimes in a situation where maybe a seller is providing closing cost help, or the seller is, say, a contractor who can fix these items for less expensive than you and I could. And with that, that often allows the buyer to get more items fixed, because again, it doesn't cost the seller as much money. And secondarily, in the event that a seller is maybe making a closing cost contribution, we might be maxed out on credit. So the banks typically limit our credits to around 3%. And so if the buyer is already receiving that, it doesn't allow us to add additional credits for repairs. And therefore, it really pushes us into that category where the seller needs to make repairs. Either way, the buyer and seller are ultimately negotiating, and oftentimes it all works out in the end. So we rarely have issues, but these are just some of the different things. So with that, let's share a little bit of a home inspection story. Take it away.
Yeah, this was a doozy. A few years ago, I was at a home inspection, and we were walking around the outside of the house. And the home inspector called everybody over in a bit of a panic. And he said, everybody needs to come over here right now and look at this. And there was water that had puddled around the foundation of the house. And he scared the buyers big time, and got them very, very concerned that there are foundation problems and that water was penetrating into the house, and really just scared everybody to no end. We later discovered by somebody looking up that the house that had central air conditioning, in the third floor of the house, the air conditioning didn't work well. So the current homeowner had put a window unit air conditioner up there, and the condensation line was dripping down around the house. And it was just water from the air conditioner, and it turned out to be no big deal. In the meantime, however, he got the buyer really, really riled up, and it potentially became a big problem. We were able to diffuse it, but it became an issue where we didn't really need to have such a big issue over it. So that's one of the more wild ones that I had.
Right. And with that, we always encourage buyers to contact one or more home inspectors. You can talk to them a little bit and get their perspective. We typically recommend people that we've had a good experience with. We haven't had issues where a buyer, say, called us 2 months later and say, oh, all these things are wrong with the house, and why didn't somebody tell me? That's really the mark of a good inspector, that experience over time, and how did that house fare over time from the time that the inspection was conducted? What did the buyer know, and what happened after they bought it? And were there any really unforeseen things? So with that, there's your little bit on home inspections. Hopefully you found it helpful. Please like and subscribe if you like these videos, and we'll look forward to another one. Talk to you later.